Welcome to From Heartache to Healing and Hope with your host, Bernadette Winters Bell, LMSW. This podcast explores the many layers of life through the lens of loss and grief, often with special guests who share their perspectives on this universal yet unique process. These explorations can offer you, the listener, avenues to encourage you to have these conversations with yourself, your family, your community, your world.
Hello, I'm Bernadette Winters Bell, the host of From Heartache to Healing and Hope, maybe the most important part. And today's interview, whoa, Cheryl DeDecker. She's a board-certified hypnotherapist. And she doesn't have a watch, and she doesn't make you do strange things, but rather we talked about how we can have control over the brain and be able to live our best life. Really interesting. I can't wait for you. So I'll be here at the podcast From Heartache to Healing and Hope. Your host, Bernadette Winters Bell. Come and see Cheryl DeDecker. Welcome. I'm Bernadette Winters Bell, your host of From Heartache to Healing and Hope. And what a guest I have today, Cheryl DeDecker. Cheryl, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Bernadette. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited. So since you know yourself better than most would know, could you be so kind as to introduce yourself to my audience?
Yes, thank you. My name is Cheryl DeDecker. I am a board-certified hypnotist and hypno coach, and also a Tai Chi Easy practice leader. And I have a practice here in Oneonta, although I see clients all over the world, and actually I'm seeing clients via Zoom only right now, but that will change, no doubt, in the future. And so my office is at 50 Deet Street, and Bernadette and I used to be neighbors. We're still in the same building, but sadly I don't get to see you as much as I
No, we're
as I used
upstairs,
to.
downstairs neighbors now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
tell me how you came to do this work. You know, because people I don't hear say, when I grow up, I want to be a board certified hypnotherapist.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't hear that often.
you
Tell
don't
me
hear
how you
that
got
often.
there.
I know. I'm
Oh,
surprised, but so I started out as a counselor. I was a certified counselor doing primarily cognitive behavioral therapy for many, many years, for about 20 years prior to becoming a hypnotist.
hmm.
And what I found was that oftentimes my clients would really want to change something, but when it came down to making that change, they would hit this wall, like this
Mhm.
imaginary wall. And I really wanted to know what is the wall? It's kind of
Right.
like saying, okay, I'm going to have, yeah, sure, a serving of ice cream is a half a cup. Yeah, that's all I'm going to have. But then before you know it, it's gone, know?
And
So
it was
what
only a pint or half a gallon. Right, right.
exactly. So what happens in between? And so what I really started studying, I found out more about the subconscious mind, and it
Mm,
fascinated me. So as I studied it, I just became more and more interested and became certified, and then became board certified. And now I work with just everyday people with everyday kinds of problems, helping them to use both their conscious mind and their subconscious mind to make positive changes in their life. Yeah.
So did you have to buy a watch to be able to work with
I get
people?
that all the time.
I figured.
I do. The funny thing though is that people don't realize that we are in hypnosis throughout the day, numerous times a day. It's a natural brainwave state.
Hmm,
It's the alpha or theta brainwave state. And
right.
so it's something that's natural that we go in and out of all the time. It's just that we don't know how to maximize it. And there's another way that we go in and out of hypnosis all the time that I feel like my job is to help people unhypnotize themselves. And I'm sure you're familiar with this one, and your clients are too. It's has to do with worry.
Mm,
worry is actually a form of self-hypnosis.
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hypnosis is really just focus plus imagination plus a suggestion.
Mm.
And when you think about what worry is focusing on what we don't want to have happen, imagining in great detail what we don't want to have happen, and then giving ourselves a suggestion about, oh, this is going to be awful if this happens. So a lot of my job really is kind of helping people unhypnotize themselves, helping people to maximize their brain in the way that helps them to be healthier and happier, more calm, more grounded, more successful.
I talk to people that we're in control of our brain, even though we may not realize it, and that most people out there aren't talking about this, what we're talking about. So I'll say, I know that you might have experienced laying down, go to sleep, and be physically tired. And then your brain says, whoa, time to get busy. And you feel like you can't control the rolling of thoughts, often going downhill. Perhaps everything you thought about last night and the night before and the night before. And of course, nothing's changed by all of this. But exactly. And teaching them ways that, first of all, just the concept. You can have control of this. I'll say to them, so if you were driving here today, and let's say it was a 27-minute drive. When you got in the car, you in essence said to yourself, all right, you can do whatever you want, brain, for 27 minutes. I know where I'm going. And the brain goes, which people talk about crying when they're driving. I don't advocate for that. We got to be on the road with them. But in essence, you then pull up into the parking lot and say, okay, I'm good. Put it on pause and do what you have to do and come in the office. So in essence, you gave the brain 27 minutes to think about whatever it wanted to think about. We don't consider it like that. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And oftentimes that's a perfect example. Oftentimes there are subconscious habits or patterns that will kick in when we kind of let it have its way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And we think that we can't stop it. So I'll say, if you're at home and thinking about, and I imagine them going down a black hole, and thinking about it. However, if the phone rings or the buzzer goes off for the laundry, and you stop what you're thinking and go in another direction. So in essence, you've said, okay, I'm putting you on pause right now, brain, right. And I'm going to go do this other thing. Mm-hmm. But we don't think of it like that we have control. But of course we do, right? Mm-hmm. Like if we're reading a book and someone starts to talk to us and we're engrossed in what we're doing. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, wait a minute, there's sound coming from something. What? Oh, you're talking to me? Oh, okay, hold on a minute. Maybe put a marker where you are and then ask them to start from the beginning. Because just because you're there doesn't mean your mind is ready to hear what that person's saying until you tell your mind, stop book, look up, pay attention. Right. To me, those are examples of exactly what the kind of work that you're doing.
Oh, perfect examples. Yeah. I mean, they call it highway hypnosis. Getting lost in a book or a movie is a perfect example of going into a hypnotic state where you're just so focused, you're using your imagination, you're blocking everything else out. So it's something that feels natural. We do it all the time. And so people are surprised when they find out, oh, this is a natural process of my brain. I'm just actually taking the reins of my brain and making it work for me rather than against myself.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you can help people, it sounds like, do many things or undo many things.
A lot of times people think of hypnosis as losing weight and quitting smoking or living smoke-free, and that's definitely things that hypnosis can help with. But there are so many other things that hypnosis helps with. Because I was a cognitive behavioral therapist for so long, obviously my interest in stress, anxiety, worry is up there. But I'm also certified as a complementary medical hypnotist, which means I help people with sleep, with pain management, with kind of prepping for medical treatments, as well as what I call the 3 Ps. It's perfectionism, procrastination, and people pleasing. There are things that we kind of take for granted, but perfectionism oftentimes leads to a lot of anxiety. If people feel like, oh, I have to hold myself to a condition I would never hold anyone else to.
Right.
And people pleasing oftentimes leads people to not be able to say no when they need to say no, not be able to set a healthy boundary or limit. It's funny because I have a women's group that I do that's called a self-care circle. And we have different topics each week. And the number of times that people have said, no, let's do the one about saying no again. I need to hear that again.
Yes, good as a refresher course also. Absolutely. Well, it's interesting that so many people, which, I mean, my practice and you and yours, that feel as if they're not pleasing people, therefore they're not being a good enough person, or other variants of that idea, and that people won't like them, or all different kinds of things. And doing it at the expense of oneself seems to take a long time to come to the place to say, yeah, I don't think I'm willing to do that anymore to the extent that I was. Right. They put
Definitely.
themselves on the list. I mean, before that, they might have been on the list of who they take care of, but most of the time they didn't even make page one, on the list.
Exactly.
Right. Wow.
Yes. And don't you find too that in working with clients, that so much of that sense of I'm worthy, I'm good enough just as I am. I feel like that is oftentimes something that, because of experiences growing up, because of things that happen subconsciously, that we pick up messages that lead us to think, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm not worthy. And so, if everybody on the planet could get that message, just that message alone of I'm good enough just as I am, I just think, wow, the world would be such a different place, such a happier place.
I've always thought, I do a lot of work with children and had it in the past, and thought if they learned that death is a part of life and a natural part of life, you're born, you live, you die, the difference is how much is in between there in the living part, that we'd all have a healthier idea and then be more at peace with what our lives bring us. It's a similar type of wish. It hasn't happened yet, I'm just going to say. But I'm holding on to it. I'm not letting go. So, but you're right. And in the culture that we live in, it isn't very acceptable that we think highly of ourselves. That's often considered snooty, or actually not something that you want to strive for. And if you thought of yourself as highly as you thought of others, let's not even go beyond that level, just gave yourself that same grace, and then said, yes, I'm worthy. Do I have faults? Well, of course I do. But there are things that I'm good at, or I help others, or whatever the list may entail. If we would just look at it more evenly, that balance thing is so big for me. We're quick to say everything we do wrong, but what we do right, we don't even mention, because, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. That gets short shifted because that doesn't need mention. So this should come automatically and we don't even mention it, but one thing wrong, and that's the thing that we focus on. Right.
Very true. Very true.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Our brain can get stuck in that way. And I have so many people that I help them kind of build up that self-worth and that self-esteem. But in the beginning, oftentimes they're afraid that they're going to become arrogant. And so I give them a guarantee. I call it the,
yep. That's pretty brave. What's that?
I call it's the big head guarantee, that if I feel you are feeling so good about yourself that you're beyond healthy feeling good about yourself, and you begin to get a huge head, I will tell you flat out. I will be completely honest with you.
And say, your head no longer fits through the door. We have to have a conversation.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, I haven't had to say that to anyone I've worked with yet, because
people
who are worried about being arrogant,
Right.
don't become arrogant.
Right.
Just
People
who are
that
concerned
you're worried about it
Yeah.
is, of course, what the balancing piece is. So
Yes.
isn't it interesting that even just thinking kindly of ourselves goes to arrogance?
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
Because of what messages we got, whether they were audio messages or body language or listening what other people were talking about, what was on TV, whatever it is. Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
Don't get too big for your britches.
Yes.
It came up somewhere, and
I was
I don't
just
know who
thinking
that
that.
was, grandma maybe, and things like that, which is that same kind of thought process. And really, where did that come from?
Mhm.
That are people easier to control if they're not too big for their britches? I mean, I never quite thought of it before. We're just talking about it now. But you could see if you went back, I don't know, 100 years more, what was considered acceptable and permissible, and how you wanted. Did you just want your children to grow up and say, yes, mom, yes, mom, yes, mom, and just do what you say? Well, easily. I have seen that.
Sure. Mhm.
And what does that do to the thoughts about yourself? Well, I guess I'm not good enough to express my thoughts because no one ever wanted to hear it.
Yes. And
And
so
that,
many. Yeah. So
right.
many.
And that wasn't the point, as best I understood history. But it was more like just to keep things under control. Listen, I got to raise you kids and do the house and do the, let's just, children should be seen and not heard, and let's move this along.
Well, that's a great example, because so many of the times as children, we pick up messages that, our parents meant no harm at all,
That's
typically.
right, exactly.
They were just doing their best with what was available to them. But as children, we can pick up these messages that can be limiting to us as adults without even realizing it.
Absolutely, without even realizing it.
Mhm.
Wow. So can you explain to us the process of what you would do with somebody if they came to you to work on a particular issue?
Sure. So, part of that process is really helping people, first of all, understand how the brain works and how they themselves can create a state of hypnotic trance, and can change these things that were programmed. It doesn't matter how long ago they were programmed. That's why it's so beautiful. It just amazes me how powerful our brain is. That if we had a trauma or something that happened in the 3rd grade and it's been impacting our whole life, you can still fix it with hypnosis. And we can do that through, hypnosis that I do with clients and helping them to reprogram negative or limited thinking. I teach all of my clients self-hypnosis. So it really is that process of, how do I learn these brain tools so that I'm really deciding for myself now as an adult, what do I believe? What's healthy for me? These outmoded beliefs that maybe I picked up along the way, I don't need to let them impact me anymore. I can let go of that.
When you're speaking of that, something that I've thought about for a long time, I call it a fantasy, but it's something we can discuss in public, that I've always had, that we have a bag with us since we're born. It could be an old, doesn't matter what bag. But I picture us putting into this bag all of our experiences, coping tools, difficulties, strengths. And in this bag, they're stones. And so my fantasy is that there would be a ceremony, we'll call it age 21-ish. I don't know if you have a special outfit or not. If it was me, I'd get a special outfit for it.
Of course.
Of course. But what would be the process? You would empty the bag and say, here, I have some stones here. And let's say you had all these stones. And you would say, oh, this represents that when I get mad, I stomp my feet. Yeah, that was good when I was 5. I think I'll leave that one behind. And this
Mhm.
is a strength where I'm kind to people. Yeah, that's a good one. And I want to increase that. I'll take that with me and go through the whole bag and decide what you're going to take into adulthood,
Mhm.
right? We
Mhm.
have control over our brain
Mhm.
and our choices. And so, and it gives you a marking point to say, like we think of Sweet 16 or quinceañeras or 21, becoming an adult, of course, is a process. It's not a day. But if you had a time where you said, I'm going to look at what I've brought to this point, what I've learned through whatever method, and I'm going to decide what to take forward and what to change as I go, and what for now I want to leave behind. And maybe do it again at certain other, what I call developmental stages in one's life,
Mhm.
that it would begin to teach us that we do have control over our thoughts and our emotions and all of that, and not just take it. Because I imagine then most of us, by now it's a burlap bag, it gets really central. And you're schlepping it through life filled with all of these experiences and maybe bad messages and, difficulties. And normally when someone reaches a place of a trauma or a loss or whatever brings them to you or I or other people, then they're willing to empty the bag and look at it, but only because they feel like they're losing their mind and they got nothing to lose, Right. So I would like it to be more part of how we grow up.
Mhm.
Sounds pretty good. I don't know how to
Definitely.
make it happen, but that's my thought.
Oh, I love it.
Right?
That's a wonderful example, and that bag that's filled with thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, that's so much of kind of as a hypnotist what we take a look at. What do you want to
Exactly.
change? What
Right.
isn't working for you? And when it comes to kind of, what can you do hypnotically? Really, we're going to the source of where these things are stored. That's why it's so powerful. Um, that's why it's different than other forms of help. Sometimes people will say, well, how's it different than meditation?
Mhm.
Right? So I explain that it's really, you're going to the same neighborhood, right? You're going to use your imagination. But we're going to use specific hypnotic language that creates change, ongoing permanent change of things that aren't working for you. So a lot of times people will say, oh, it kind of feels somewhat similar, but it's just amazing. It feels so relaxing. So it is different than meditation. It goes to a deeper level of change.
Sure. And
And
often meditation could be a way to prepare for a session of with you of hypnotic suggestions to help them make the changes that they want to get to that state to be open. I remember when I came to see you one time and I'd had a particularly very difficult day and specifically did not stop for an iced coffee. It's the most important part of the story. Before I came to see you, because I thought, I don't want to be hyped up. I want to
yes,
be tired so that in spite of myself, I would be relaxed.
there you go. There you go. Well, it
Right.
is true that iced coffee or any kind of caffeinated beverage is probably not best. An espresso shot right before you go get your hypnosis is probably not indicated. Um, but, it's interesting because the two things come to mind there. One is that people don't have to be relaxed to be able to be hypnotized. Sometimes the people that are the most hypnotizable are ones that are anxious because again with that worry you're already halfway there in
Right.
hypnosis.
Right. Right.
um, but so the other thing is that people will sometimes say, I'm not sure if I can be hypnotized.
Right.
They'll say maybe, oh, I'm not gullible or I'm not whatever. And
Mhm.
people who are most hypnotizable, first of all, you want to be hypnotized. You want the experience. You want to make a change in your life. If you
Mhm.
love a sense of adventure, if you have any practice of meditation or yoga or guided visualization, anything that you've done like that already, you're going to be a natural,
Right.
and it's wanting to make the change. Your motivation is really key. So once people realize what hypnosis is, they know I'm already using a brain power that I have.
Right.
It's not about being gullible or able to relax or whatever. No, it's really tapping into a power that you already have available to you.
Absolutely. And how have you found during this time of the pandemic? I see that your work has gone Zoom. But has the issues people bring forward changed? Or have you seen anything that people are focusing on that they're informed differently now?
That's a really good question. I think sometimes I feel that my work up till now has really prepared me for this time. And I'm sure you probably feel similar in many ways. It's, all the work in helping people manage stress, anxiety, change, right? We're going through so much change in the world right now. And so those are things that really have come to the forefront. And coping with things like worry and loneliness, and how to stay connected, how to do self-care while things are more constrained. These are all things that have come more to the surface, as well as help with sleep. That's another one that's certainly at the forefront, because people are really dealing with a lot right now.
Absolutely. It's so interesting that something that happened in our community, country, world, so stopped us all kind of right in our tracks. And some of us haven't worked at all, and some of us are working all the time. But it's made a big change. And that's not even dealing with the health part of the pandemic and the people, the souls that have passed. But the time that it's given people to be reflective and maybe to be more about their family, because that's the only people they're seeing. And they have to be more about their family. And how people are talking about things they used to say, I'll do that, when I have time, I'll get around to it. And for many people, they've got enough time to do just about anything that was on that list. And so the things that we did with procrastination, it's hard to say that now. It just doesn't ring true. And also, I think that people have really, really begun to appreciate the socialization and the human contact and that lack thereof. I'm sure you're hearing that in your work.
Definitely. Yes. And the other piece of that too, when you say that we now have time, a lot of what I feel that I am repeating to my clients is that while you may have more time, it's okay if you don't have more energy, if you don't feel that you're as productive as you normally would be. So I think there's just been a lot of kind of education about, we've not been through a pandemic before.
Yeah,
we're in survival mode.
Place before, right?
Right. So to just have that compassion towards ourselves of, yes, you know what, you may have a list a mile long of all the things that you wanted to get done, and you might have this much energy today.
Exactly.
Take what you can do every day, use what you can do what you can do to the best of your ability, and forgive yourself and be compassionate with your energy level, your concentration, all of those things, because all of us are affected by it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've said for years that, and this is about the grieving process, but now it's expanded to so many things, that some days you get up, get dressed, go out, conquer the world. Well, that's when we can go out and do those things. And other days, PJs and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And the most amount of energy you have is to decide, will it be crunchy or creamy peanut butter? Will it be strawberry or grape jelly? Right. And then you're exhausted. It's time for a nap. And the truth is I know people often think of that as bad and good days, but However, I see it more as the days that you're compassionate and kind with yourself and allow yourself to rest, you're filling up the bucket so you can have those other days to get those things done. It's a
Yes.
constant balance. And so it's
Mhm.
not a bad thing that you did to,
Mhm.
you know, now if you're on the couch for a month watching Netflix, it's another story. But if you're resting up and filling up your resources so you can do other things, then it's all about.
Mhm.
If you use all your energy every day and go, we know what, you know, that you're going to just find yourself exhausted, you know, with
Yes,
nothing. Right, right.
exactly. Yeah. I've called that hitting the wall,
Yes,
because so many times we just push ourselves and push ourselves to do without really kind of pausing
right.
and acknowledging, how am I feeling about what's going on in the world right now? How am I feeling about my life and where I am, and to just kind of process that. And so I know it's like, talk about someone who's used to this and familiar with this. It's like, okay, if we don't stop and process, at some point our body's going to make us process. We're going to hit that wall. We're going to need to, maybe
Exactly.
we're going to need to really cry. We're going to need to let it out. You know, we're going to need to get these feelings out that maybe we've been just trying to push away because they're
For
unpleasant.
sure. You know, I think of it as you get a little hint and it's like you brush it away off your shoulder. And then someone knocks on your head and I'm not paying attention to that. And then you find yourself in the produce aisle of a Price Chopper and you see peaches. And peaches were the favorite thing. And you're a puddle about peaches in the produce aisle.
Yes.
Right. And thinking, where the hell did that come from? But
Mhm.
it was all there. And when we don't give it the expression that it needs, it's
Mhm.
coming out. It's not a case of
Mhm.
it, it's when and how much
Exactly.
control, you know, and that's what I say to people, just like, you know, if you want to have control over it, then you want to let it out in a safe place, whether it's journaling or crying or whatever form that it takes, allowing yourself to rest, to hydrate, and then you're
Mhm.
ready to move on. And
Mhm.
you got a chance. You're not going to be in a puddle about peaches in the produce aisle.
Yes.
Absolutely. Right. And
Mhm.
being kind to yourself and compassionate. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fascinating. So tell me, what gives you hope for the future? That's assuming you have hopes.
You can make that assumption. I think
Yes, I
that's
thought
safe to
so.
say. Um, you know, I think I see so much resourcefulness
Mhm.
and little acts of kindness in the world. I see young people who are invested and want to make the world a better place. You know, I think part of it too is actively looking for that,
Yes.
because you know we don't always get that in the news, right? So maybe I have certain places online that I look, or I get a positive newsletter, or you know I talk to friends about what they're doing or what they've seen. So I
Right.
think we have that ability to kind of, all right, what's the good news, what's going on, how are people coming together, how are people
Right.
helping each other in making the world a better place. It's still happening, it's still going on all around us. It's just being aware of that.
Absolutely. Like Mrs. Rogers told to her son Fred, and when it was a time of a fire or trauma of some sort, you know, how difficult it was. And she said, look for the helpers, always look for the helpers. And that's what the
Mm-hmm.
hope is, because they
Mm-hmm.
always are there. Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, I know my audience is going to be thrilled to hear everything you've had to say. If they wish to get in contact with you, Cheryl, how would they do that?
Well, they could go to my website, which is cherylscompass.com, and they could learn more about what I offer, as well as contact me there. They could also email me, which is just my name. It's Cheryl, Cheryl .dedecker, DEDECKER, @gmail.com. I do a free phone consult for anybody who wants to talk about how hypnosis might be able to help them.
Mhm.
So they could always contact me to schedule that.
Wonderful, good. And we'll make sure we put that information up when we launch the podcast so that people can do that. And I
Thank
want
you.
to thank you so much. I love speaking with people who are helping, who are informing people and who are a helper in the world, which is obviously what we need right now. So thank you so much for being a guest today on From Heartache to Healing and Hope.
Thank you, Bernadette. My pleasure. Always a pleasure to chat with you.